Welcome to the Epic English channel. I sit and watch my soon-to-be ex-wife Laura and my best friend turned jerk Robert. We've been married for 25 years. Robert and I have been friends for 23 years. My former best friend became a complete piece of trash the moment he first started sleeping with my wife. "Listen, Steve. You don't need that gun," said Bob. "Whatever's going on, we can discuss it rationally. You don't need to be afraid of me. Please take your finger off the trigger." My Glock 45 lay flat on the arm, rest of my chair, my finger resting on the trigger. I don't think that would be great for my health. After all, you outweigh me by 30 km and are 15 centers taller. I've seen the photos in your house with your Navy SEAL buddies. You could probably snap my neck in about 20 seconds. No thanks. I think we're better off sitting here until Carol gets back. She dropped your youngest off at softball practice and should be here soon. Listen. Steve said my cheating, adulterous wife. Laura, I don't know what you think is happening here, but I demand that you stop this right now or I'll handle it myself. And what exactly are you going to do? Laura. I wave the gun. If you stand up, I'll shoot your kneecap. And if you stand up, Bob, I'll shoot something else. So why don't we all just sit here quietly while we're at it? I bet if the two of you think hard enough with those piece-sized brains of yours, you might figure out what this is all about. Now why don't we play a quiet little game? The first one to spill. Everything gets to walk away intact, and I'll shoot the other. The two of them sat there stunned. I just stared at them as they began to sweat and squirm on the couch. I started reminiscing about the better days when Laura and I first met. But to hell with that, who cares? What matters now is one small comment she made a few months ago that got me thinking. Carol and Bob were at a barbecue on a Saturday afternoon when Laura came over with a couple of cold beers. She handed them to us and said, "For my husbands." I spit my beer out through my nose. When she said that, Bob just smirked. What was that? I asked Steve. "I have 3 husbands," she said, quickly recovering. She giggled and added, "I have a work husband, a husband at the garage, and a husband I actually love. That's you, Steve." I laughed and she kissed me passionately. She had never done that before. My stomach twisted into a knot. I started paying closer attention to the two of them and nothing. I didn't notice anything unusual. I began checking the security system and reviewing the cloud recordings. I pulled years of archived footage stored in the system, and again nothing could. They have done something years ago before we installed the surveillance cameras. But the way she said husbands made it sound like she was talking about the present. Over the next few months I went through her phone records and all the emails on her computer and phone starting from the previous year. Still nothing. I knew they both worked in a government office where surveillance cameras were everywhere. There was no way they could have done anything without being caught. I even checked credit card receipts I'd saved over the years. Once again, nothing. It seemed they were only together in the car. They never left early or drove to work in separate cars. They only traveled alone when one of them was sick for family events or for vacations. They were always home at the designated times. The only times they returned home late at night were when they got stuck in heavy traffic due to an accident. Never more than an hour and 15 minutes, give or take, each day. They never went to conferences or seminars. I started to think my instincts had failed me. That was the case until 6 weeks ago when Bob came over, and so did my eldest son, Eric. They both left at the same time. That's when I noticed they both had the same build from behind. I went online and ordered at-home DNA test kits for my children. Eric, Todd, and my youngest Anne. I asked them not to say anything to their mother. I wanted to give her a surprise for her birthday. "Surprise, happy birthday, Laura." I shouted. Carol dropped 3 plain vanilla envelopes on the coffee table in front of them. "What's this?" Laura asked Carol, "and I want the two of you to open them and read. Then I'll explain." "Oh wait, I don't think they really need any explanation," I said with a smirk. They slowly reached out, opened each envelope, and began reading. Laura went pale at first glance. Robert vomited into the basket by the couch. She grabbed the other 2 envelopes, read them, and started crying. "I'm so sorry, Steve. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I thought they were yours. I must have miscalculated the timing when I was fertile." Robert regained his composure and started pleading. "She promised me it would be safe. I would never have made a cud out of my best friend. We were never best friends. I'd bet the two of you got plenty of satisfaction out of making Carol and me look like fools. I'm not going to shoot you or try to get you fired. We're going to divorce you. If I fired you, Laura, I'd have to pay you alimony. I'll keep my pension and you'll keep yours. Everything else will be split 50-50. I've taken all our investments and moved them into a trust fund for Enan's college. I canceled all our joint credit accounts after paying them off. I took half of the remaining money and deposited it into a separate bank account. We'll put the house up for sale. All the fond memories I had of this place were nothing more than a facade. I've already rented an apartment on the other side of town, as far away from the two of you as possible. This morning I told the kids that I'm not their father, just a fool you two used. I don't think they're very happy with you and says she'll move in with me after she finishes school in 2 months. She doesn't want to talk to you, Laura. I haven't said a single disrespectful word about you, so you'll have to give her time. Please, Steve. Laura begged. I love you, I've always loved you and I always will. I just made a mistake with my cycle. I smirked and shook my head. Laura, I don't think you even believe the nonsense you're trying to sell me. There's an old saying in the Bronx. Crap has its own sound. I really do love you. I want to grow old with you watching our grandchildren and seeing them being born. She cried, trying hard not to pull the trigger. I replied, Laura, there's one problem. You and I won't have any children for you to watch. As it turns out, I'll never have grandchildren to watch either, but you can watch them with Bob. She broke into tears again and said, I'm so sorry I never wanted to do this to you. I looked at Bob and tears were streaming down his cheeks. He tried to wipe them away before they fell onto his lap. Carol stepped forward and began speaking calmly. Bob, I've talked to all your former Navy SEAL teammates and told them how you betrayed your code of honor. Not the military law, but the code of conduct between the SEALs themselves. I told them how you betrayed your best friend and me for the past 23 years. In the email it states that you are now considered persona non grata to them. I'm sure they'll call you personally. As for you and me, it's over. I won't have to worry about keeping the house anymore. I'll be receiving alimony for the rest of my life, or until I remarry. You know what, I'm never getting married again. I'll just bring men into my house and sleep with them in the bed you're paying for. I've already asked my lawyer to freeze our financial accounts. We'll be living off spousal support until the divorce is finalized. I'm going to take everything we have. I'm sure my lawyer will tear you both apart for what you've done to me, and I'll make sure to play the part of the wronged wife in front of the jury, the woman who wasted 23 years of her life on you. The good news is I sent the DNA information to your parents. Bob, they're thrilled to know they have 3 more grandchildren, but Laura, I can't say the same about Steve's parents. They were absolutely devastated to learn. They'll never have grandchildren. Laura slid off the couch sobbing in despair that I waved the gun at Bob, help her up Bob and put her back on the couch. He picked her up, cradled her in his arms, and sat down beside her holding her so she wouldn't slip back onto the floor, that a man entered the room and asked, Are you Mr. Robert Watkins? Yes, Bob replied, You've been served. The man turned to Laura, Mrs. Laura Foster. She only shook her head that he placed an envelope on her lap and took a picture, You've been served. Then he turned and walked out. Bob said, Carol, this package contains a restraining order against you. You have 2 hours to pack your things and get out of the house. I'm not afraid of you per se, but I don't want to deal with you anymore. I'll have it lifted so you can see the kids, but I think you should move in with Laura. Laura, I want you to leave for the weekend. I told her I'll finish packing my things and leave on Sunday morning, and you can come back home. Hell, just think about it. You can have Bob move in and you can share everything, not just the ride to work. Laura burst into tears again. All right, Bob, we give up. Bob looked confused by this statement. I continued to explain. Carol and I have been racking our brains, trying to figure out how the two of you got away with this for so long, well, at least until the day she called you one of her husbands, since it doesn't matter anymore. Why don't you tell us how you two managed to betray me all these years? Bob sighed, slowly shook his head and said, In the car while we were commuting to and from work, Carol and I exchanged incredulous looks. That's it. He continued, in the car, never anywhere else. When did it start? I asked. About a year after we started carpooling. One day we got stuck in traffic. I was starting to get a headache from the stress. Laura noticed I was uncomfortable, reached over and began massaging my neck. My headache slowly faded. That's when she noticed something else was off. She giggled and said, while looking at my size, that my neck wasn't the only thing feeling tense, and as you, Carol, can confirm, it's extremely hard to hide the size. I came home that day and took out all my frustrations on you, Carol. But about a month later I was driving and Laura got a cramp in her calf. She cried out in pain. I told her to put her leg on my lap while I kept driving. That day she was wearing tights and a pencil skirt. I started massaging her calf and she relaxed. Then, the tension arose again. She placed her leg on my lap and began moving it gently to help me relax. By the time I realized what was happening, she adjusted her skirt and began touching herself. The atmosphere in the car grew intense. She was clearly on the edge when I touched her thigh to steady her, and it brought her to a state of satisfaction. We were overwhelmed with guilt and swore. We would never do it again, but it happened again. When did this escalate into something more intimate? We couldn't do anything more serious because of the heavy traffic and daylight. But when the clock switched to wintertime, the roads became darker. If traffic was smooth, we occasionally allowed ourselves small touches. If I was driving, she would help me manage my stress. If there were accidents, we'd stop in traffic jams. I always made sure no truck drivers could see what we were doing when she climbed on top of me. That's why our windows were tinted. We didn't need any prying eyes. I looked at Laura. Laura, please look at me. She lifted her swollen eyes. Please tell me I didn't eat his cream pies. Bob growled, speaking through clenched teeth. That's the most disgusting thing a woman can do to a man. I told her never to do that to you, and if she had, they wouldn't have found her body. She swore she wouldn't do it. Laura squeaked. I swear I didn't do that, Steve. I swear it was just sex. I love you with all my heart. I've never denied you. I always made sure you had everything you could handle at least 4 to 5 times a week, if not more. Bob pleaded with Carol. You just don't understand how hard it is at work and sitting in traffic jams day after day. Oh, poor baby. Carol replied. You needed to relieve the tension after a tough day at the office and fighting traffic. Do you remember that week when I left to take care of my sick sister? You begged me to come back home because you were losing your mind. And that was after just 1 week. Laura, what about poor Steve? He cooked dinner, made sure the house was in order, and ensured the kids finished their homework. By the time you got home, Steve, maybe we should have had an affair, given the pressure on us to always have everything taken care of by the time they got back. Laura, I thought you were telling the truth about when this must have started. It seems like I was getting attention from you every day during the summer, but in the off-season, except for weekends and holidays, you'd shut me down during the week. What changed now that I think about it before our youngest was born? I was getting sex about once every 2 weeks. Laura winced. I got the van he would drive and I would ride him. Let me guess. About 9 months before each child was born, there was a major traffic accident. You two got stuck in a jam for 8 hours. I assume you were busy during that time. Both of them looked down in shame. Carol turned to Bob. You insisted on buying the van, so that's why you wanted it. So you could dump a bucket of your juice into this adulterer for your relief. I turned to Laura. You said you loved me and never denied me what I paid full price for. When I married you, that's true, my dear, she replied. I love you with all my heart, and what about the nights when you two were having sex? You swore you never gave me his cream pies. Is that true? Yes. Laura, you're wrong. I said you denied me more than 1,000 nights over the many years you spent together in that car. She looked at me stunned as the gears turned in her head. Then she broke down, crying again. Well, Bob, I think now that 2 of you should get up and leave. As for me, I never want to see you again. You and Carol have children, so I suppose you'll still need to co-parent. I won't be attending any more family gatherings since you and Carol have children together and you and Laura have children together that should make for an interesting party without me. Bob looked at me and said, Steve, I'm sorry I was the biological donor, but you're the real father that somehow doesn't make me feel any better. Now you two leave, Laura. You can come back on Sunday. Carol helped me pack an overnight bag for you and your parents are waiting for you. I was sitting in my chair sipping my Jack and Coke when I felt soft hands rubbing my shoulders. You've got so much tension in your shoulders, she said, leaning over me and whispering in my ear. I want to take all that pressure away. How about a little revenge sex? I know you like my chest. You're always staring at it. The divorces were finalized and Bob moved in with Laura. It didn't last long. Interestingly, they stopped carpooling together. I continued seeing Carol, my daughter, and went off to the state. Carolyn decided that since I received child support money from Bob, she could now afford to enroll in a better college. One evening, Carol and I were having dinner at my place. It was a weekend when the kids were with Bob. I got a call for Anne, and after hanging up, I felt like I was about to faint. Carol looked at me with concern and asked, "What's wrong, dear, all the kids?" All 7 of them just took an ancestry test. They want to see how much DNA they share. I need to pack and run. I figure I've got a few weeks before Bob and Laura find out that the 4 kids you had with him are actually mine. He's going to hunt me down and tear me into a million pieces. Damn. Carol replied, I'm coming with you. Why? He won't hurt you. He's not the kind of man who would hit a woman easy for you to say, you weren't the one feeding him your cream pies for 23 years. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Epic English. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.